Have a roll call.
George Jones.
Chuck Smallwood.
Sylvia Henry.
Catherine Nyberger.
Joe Von Toma.
Steve Gripman.
Mary Bicycle.
Okay. And if we could stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, please.
I'm going to sit.
Yep. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Okay. Look for a motion for approval of the agenda.
I move that we approve the agenda.
Okay, do we have a second?
I'll second it.
All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Okay. Oh,
Hey, great. Boy, do we have a quorum.
Let it be known that Sean
see
Cuff
it.
arrived. I look for approval of the minutes from the August 13th, 2025.
I'll approve the minutes from August 13th, 2025.
Second that.
I'll second that.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Okay, and then the old business of corporate single-family home rentals. I will turn this over to Mr. Gritman. He did a very wonderful report. And
Thank you, Mr. Chair, Commission. So the material that is in your packet tonight is a summation, as best we can tell at this point anyway, of the single-family rental housing situation in Montrose. And we introduced this idea at your prior meeting just to have a little discussion about where we might be heading with the licensing for rentals in the community, and kind of calling out particularly the rental of single-family homes separate from rental of multifamily or other attached housing, which we kind of expect, I guess, in multifamily apartment buildings or other attached housing is much more likely to be rented. Not all of it obviously is, but that's the expectation anyway, a lot of times when you have attached housing. But when we have detached single-family housing, our general expectation is that most of that's going to be available for sale. And one of the reasons cities such as Montrose promote single-family housing is because homeownership has a lot of kind of cultural advantages to communities. People that own their own homes tend to be more civically engaged. They're more likely to be kind of building roots in your community, whether that's in your school system or within your civic organizations. They statistically vote more often. They volunteer more often. So there are a lot of reasons that single-family homeownership is a thing that communities pursue as part of their general land use patterns and planning. One of the struggles that some communities have started to see with single-family housing is kind of the limiting of those available homes for sale and for purchase for either new home buyers or move-up home buyers, whatever it may be. Particularly when we think about the new home buyers and the most affordable marketplace for single-family homes. There is a movement, not just in Montrose or the region, but in the state and throughout the country, of more and more corporate ownership of single-family housing. And particularly as housing has been, you've probably seen in the news, difficulties with new family formation and trying to come up with capital to put down payments on homes and get mortgages. The more we limit the supply of available single-family homes, the more difficult it is for those homes to be affordable and particularly for first-time home buyers but others all the way up the market and income ladder. So one of the things that we've done with single-family homes is consider whether or not we should be creating some limitations around how many of those homes can be licensed for rental in the community. So the first step is to know as best we can how many are being rented in their current, kind of what is the current landscape out there for ownership and rental. And I will tell you that the material that you have is still only an estimate. What we worked on with the county property data was to identify all the single-family home, all the detached single-family homes in R1 single-family districts in Montrose, and there are about 1,100 or so of those. And then with county data, you can identify which are registered as homestead or non-homestead. So homestead classification means that the owner, taxpayer, is living on the property. Non-homestead means that they might not be living on the property. So one of the things that our data shows is that there are about 120 or so of our 1,150 single-family homes that are non-homestead. So about 10% if you take all of them as non-homestead. When we look through the data, what we find out is that a significant number of the 120, about 50 or so, a little more than that, are owned by and the taxpayer's address is the same as the home. So it's possible that those people are living in the homes they own but haven't filed a homestead classification. So we don't know whether those homes are being rented for sure. But when you take that 50 out of the 120, you end up with around 70. And actually a little bit less than that when we shake out the numbers in more detail. But so we're kind of dealing with at least 70 homes being rented. There may be some more, and we've got to do some follow-up research on that last 50 to know as much as we can about them. But part of that is in terms of identifying all the properties that are being rented so that they can come in and get a license for their rental. The city is going to we expect it to enact a licensing program that will manage rental properties in the community, make sure that they're meeting whatever occupancy requirements, fire, building code, those kinds of things. And that gives the city some ability to enforce if there are negligent landlords or tenants who aren't living in their homes the way that we always hope families and individuals will live in neighborhoods. So that's kind of the broad picture here. There isn't this official action for the Planning Commission to take tonight, but we are looking for feedback and kind of your thoughts and ideas about this. The changes that would come to the ordinance are basically part of the general city code. So we don't have to have a formal public hearing and a zoning ordinance amendment like we often deal with at Planning Commission level. But because this is a housing issue and a land use issue, we want to make sure the Planning Commission had an opportunity to express your thoughts about it. So as the council goes forward looking at formal ordinance adoption, they'll have the feedback and advice that you might be interested in providing as part of that. So that's where we are. I will say that I developed some ordinance language based on what we know, and again with that caveat that we're still counting a little bit to be a little more detailed. But with what we know, we've suggested that an ordinance might be adopted that would limit the number of single-family homes available for rental to about 70 in the community, a little more than what the actual number is, so that there might be a few that float upward toward that a little bit, but that's pretty tight to where, more or less, where the market is right now. And it may be more, like I said, it may be more than that, so we'll have to adjust our numbers as we go. The second component of that is to limit the number of homes for rental that any one person can be involved in ownership for. So if you had a chance to look through that table of property owners and addresses and whether or not it made sense to you, we kind of culled that data and then grouped the individual properties by owner or taxpayer name. And so there's one group that appears to own as many as 14 single-family homes. There's actually 2 corporate names for those 14, but they're very similar, and they have the same mailing address in Tucson, Arizona. So I feel pretty confident it's the same group. But one of the suggestions here is that apart from that group, almost all the other owners of rental housing, single-family housing in the community, own 6 or fewer, and the vast majority own 2 or fewer. There are many that own just one home that they rent out. So one of the suggestions here is to think about a threshold for how many individual homes any one owner could be involved in for rental in the community. And if you set it at 6, or 6 being the maximum number, 7 being too many kind of thing, you'd only be impacting one existing owner in the community. You could float that number higher if you feel comfortable to allow a little more expansion if that's of interest to you. To deal with the owner of the 14, we would recommend an ordinance that grandfathers in their number of rental licenses. So you don't have to try and enforce a code on somebody who, in good faith, owns property that they've bought for investment purposes, and all of a sudden, the city comes along, adopts an ordinance, and says, now you're no longer legal. So we've suggested that any number higher than the threshold would be grandfathered in their current situation, and as over time, as they sell those properties off, for whatever reason, they could float back down to the limiting cap. That would be a way of dealing with that higher number. You could always set the number at 14 and then not deal with that problem if you were inclined to. But I think the objective of the ordinance is to try and limit the number of large corporate ownership in the community, so you don't have companies that are coming in and buying what tend to be, in many cases, some of the most affordable homes in the community. So they convert those to rental, and now the most affordable homes for sale are no longer available to first-time home buyers, young people in the community that are forming families and want to buy homes. Now that threshold, bottom threshold, kind of starts moving up as those homes get bought up by corporate interests for rental. So that's the purpose here, is to try and preserve as much of that available for those types of buyers. And that's important for the community because long-term, you like people who buy homes and put roots here and raise their families here. They probably work in the area, but even if not, they become involved in your community. Those are the younger people are the ones that volunteer to be on the fire department and that kind of work. And so, with all due respect to people my age, you need young people coming to your community, and so this is one of the efforts that is intended to preserve that opportunity. So with that, a lot of words for me, and I know there's a lot of text and stuff in the packet, but I think a couple of things I'd like to hear, if you have thoughts about it tonight, are, first of all, where do you land on the idea of setting limits like this? Because it is kind of an imposition on the free market, right? So, I mean, to be very honest about it, it clearly is. So we should talk about that as a policy thing. But then if it does go forward for adoption, in some manner, what do you think the right threshold numbers are in terms of how many homes an individual should be able to be involved in ownership, and how many in the community would be comfortable in your view as a number. So that's I kind of think I'll throw that back to the commission then to see what kind of feedback you might have, and I will say then what we expect to do with that is kind of package this for council considerations. They go forward with their licensing ordinance work, and as I said, we still have some number crunching to do on a few to realize where we actually are, but that's kind of where it'll go from here. So with that, Mr. Chair, I'll close my trap a little bit and listen for a while.
Thank you, Mr. Goodman. Okay. Anybody have any thoughts or questions?
Yeah, I mean, I thank you for all that, by the way. I mean, I tend to kind of fall on that side, like you're saying, if it kind of impedes on the market, and I think the market is kind of something that balances having empty homes or not empty homes. So I guess my biggest concern would be that we'd have some kind of clause in there if we did do something like this that would, I don't know what kind of scenario would come up where, you know, like 2008, where all of a sudden now there's a bunch of empty homes and we have limits on renting, which would be maybe a solution for, I don't know, somebody that was in a bad financial spot. So I would just feel like there should be some language to be able to say, hey, we can pull back this rule or regulation if we're ending up with a bunch of houses that are empty. Because, I mean, I think obviously to have someone who's an owner in the home is the best, and then the next best would be a renter, and then worse than that would be an empty home.
Sure.
So that would be probably my biggest concern, is just unforeseen things that could happen with the market where we end up with empty homes. But I totally understand the idea of keeping big corporate entities out too, to some extent. That would just be my biggest concern.
Well, I have a concern too. Are the large corporations, basically the hedge funds, that are purchasing these homes, or is it Blackstone, BlackRock, Invitation? Who is it? I mean, these are huge corporations.
In some places, they are. I'm not aware of BlackRock being involved in Montrose housing right now, but and usually they tend to own on a really mega scale, but those kinds of corporations. But individual LLCs or companies or corporations that are out buying real estate are usually looking for growing markets that tend to be affordable compared to the region. So Montrose really is in that
sweet
place
spot.
with your median prices a little below what the larger metro region would be, and in a growing area. So it's potential that you would see that kind of interest. Although right now, I don't think you're seeing those multinationals, right? But
Well, how would we get to the point, like Sean referenced, of vacant homes, like a whole block of vacant homes? Isn't that a mortgage issue, or?
well, there are probably a lot of issues there too. Certainly, lenders are going to have issues with that. And historically, well, back from the 2008 example that you were talking about, banks ended up with a lot of houses on their books after foreclosures, but banks really aren't in the real estate market. Most of those sat empty. Banks aren't out there trying to rent their housing stock because they're not set up with that kind of a thing. But if you do have a situation where you have a lot of vacancy all of a sudden because of whatever market condition, you have a couple of options. The council can suspend the ordinance for some period of time if they decide there's an economic reason to do that. You could also build in a number into the ordinance if you wanted to say if vacancies reach such and such a percentage point that you would allow the caps to float upward or something. You could build a formula around that if you wanted to. I think there are ways to address that. Probably the most common one is going to be just kind of keeping our finger on the pulse. And if the economy goes south and all of a sudden we have housing issues like we had, My guess is the council is going to take note of that and say, we probably ought to think again, because I'm going to guess, without having polled anybody, but your suggestion that ownership is best, renter is better than vacancy. So I think probably everybody most people are going to agree with that. Better to have somebody living in the home than nobody living in the home. So,
Well, as far as the rental properties, who does the background checks? I mean, who do you know is coming into the community? I'm not, saying I don't want diversity. Diversity is great, but criminal element is not.
well, the landlords are going to be responsible for deciding who they rent to. The city's licensing program is going to make sure that a house that is in the community is meeting our public safety requirements. So if either the landlord is allowing their tenant to violate that, or the violation is at the tenant level only, they will have their license subject to either revocation or non-renewal.
Well, because there are issues. There's, just in our community, we've had drug issues and a murderer.
Yeah, like every community, unfortunately,
And those in-
has problems.
those are
So
in rental,
yeah,
that's background checked issues.
yeah, and you're always going to rely on the fact is you're going to rely on the landlords to be doing background checks, and it is the landlord's interest to rent to the most stable renter they can find at the market that they're in.
They may do that, but then there's roommates, a
Well,
lot of roommates.
true.
And,
but that's where your law enforcement and code enforcement come into play.
yeah.
So,
Well, home ownership is ideal, for sure.
Okay, anyone else?
Too much. And when somebody buys one and fixes it and flips it, you're fine with that as long as it's not rented, I would assume, right?
I'm sorry, say that again.
If someone buys a distressed property, repairs it and sells it again, you're not against that compared to if they rented it, right?
No, there's no restriction here on buying and selling. You would probably encourage people to buy distressed property and fix them up and resell them. Certainly, upgrading the housing stock is a good thing. So,
Are a lot of cities that are kind of in this, that same, just far enough out from the cities where it's cheaper, and are a lot of them doing this type of thing? Is this kind of something that's happening like all over the country or in the state, or just like in areas where a lot of corporate buying's happening?
it depends, but there are a lot of communities around the Twin Cities metro, both core city suburbs and outlying places that are considering these kinds of regulations.
Okay,
And it's not just a Minnesota thing, it's a
yeah.
nationwide thing. Housing is a problem. You can pick up any newspaper from any place in the country, and housing is an issue. They're all talking about it.
Yeah.
What about the state legislature? What are they doing as far as limiting housing or putting regulations on large corporates?
Well, the legislature's not involved itself in that. They've been more talking about a couple of categories of affordability, one being providing some increased funding to the Minnesota Housing Finance Agency, which funds housing at low interest rate, kind of subsidized interest rates, basically. And then the legislature has also talked quite a bit about over the last couple of years about limiting local government zoning authority to require you to have smaller single-family lots or more density. And the League of Cities have been fighting that very aggressively with the legislature over the last couple of years, but that's really what's going on at the legislature.
I know the federal government has tried to put limits on corporate ownership of homes. I don't know whether they've been successful, but there has been.
Yeah, the federal government work has been primarily through HUD and Housing Urban Development, and they really are addressing primarily the properties that they fund through HUD. So
Well, kind of, lot of these.
That's certainly a mortgage approach,
They're
right?
the ones that sold a lot of their homes.
Would the rest of you guys think it'd be better to put the cap where that existing, partnership is now at 14, or have it lower and have the one grandfathered, or what do you guys think?
I, I believe what your homework was a good balance,
Oh, yes.
you know.
I think your 6 is a good number, really.
Yep.
I will also say too, just, this is the first dive into this that Montrose is gonna take in that kind of a way. So I wouldn't doubt that this gets revisited, kind of as market conditions change or, as new homes come on the market, hopefully in a few years, once the sanitary, system is upgraded. We might see a different situation, so there's probably this is the kind of thing that kind of need to keep your finger on the pulse and, see how it works for you, so.
I mean, I don't know if you'd even want to lower that number for out of state. I know that one's from Arizona. There's a couple of properties here in town that have had problems with them. I know of them a little bit. They bought a house that I had listed years ago. So, but I mean, I know of 2 close to me that, have had some issues. One I think is still vacant. I think the city cut the grass last year. Another one that had water damage that, they had a bunch of repairs to it. It was sitting vacant for a while. So, I mean, if they're local, it's a lot better than out of state, I think.
Yeah, I think, everyone agrees it's nice to have local ownership of your rental properties.
Yes.
Unfortunately, we can't limit, because we have a interstate commerce code, requirement that requires us to treat everybody the same regardless of where they're from. So, I think everybody would agree that your point is correct one, but we don't have the power to limit it, so. I think, well, I also say, I think from my understanding is part of the licensing program that's going forward here is to be able to better address properties that are poorly maintained or, whatever, regardless of where the landlord is located. So hopefully we'll kind of attack it from that direction.
Do you have a system right now that people have to get a rental license or show it? Because I know there's 2 properties over Center Avenue that are not on this list that are rentals.
Yeah, the city is undergoing that process right now, updating that section and applying a rental license requirement. And there will be I think it's every 3-year inspection by building code staff, if I remember right. So there will be a inspection protocol. I'm kind of hearing a consensus around that 6 number.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, starting out, I wouldn't want to go much higher than that because we're going to have enough on our plate going into this. Once we get a handle on it, we can revisit it and see which way the market's going and how the implemented procedures are working out.
I wouldn't doubt too that once you implement this and you get into the licensing for a while, you'll start hearing from your landlords a little more and kind of get that feedback from them as to where they want to push you back a little bit. And that'll help the council decide if they want to make any changes.
See how high the hornet's nest bounces.
I do know that there are a lot of people that moved to Arizona that are older. And because I'm the president of the VFW Auxiliary, and we have to send out due notices to them in different areas in Scottsdale, Arizona, and that. So there is quite a few that, they probably rent to their families.
Yeah. Which there's nothing wrong with that, but they start buying up, 15% of the houses,
Right.
then there's going to be an issue, and this is getting ahead of the curve. And
The other thing I thought was interesting about the data, I think I said Tucson earlier, but Scottsdale, that is actually an anomaly for your ownerships patterns. The vast majority of them are either Montrose or close by Wright County or close by Hennepin County. So there really aren't that many that are otherwise out of state. Somebody from Florida, somebody from, another one from a single owner from Arizona that owns one. A single owner from New Mexico owns one. But the vast majority of them are pretty local landlords. So I think you're fortunate that way, that you're not dealing with a lot of really long distance, except for just a very small handful of exception.
I have a question just regarding community endowment or funds, gifts from these corporate owners. Could something like that be worked into some sort of legal document where they would be required to donate to the city?
Probably not. Again, the location of of the ownership, whether it's corporation or individual, whatever, we're not allowed to treat them any different than one of your local residents for licensing regulatory purpose.
Well, I was just curious.
Yeah.
any other thoughts? Okay. Well, thank you very much, Mr. Gritman. I'm very impressed with all this information.
Sure. It's an interesting bunch of research.
Yeah, a lot of research.
Okay, so we didn't need to have any action on this. This just goes back to,
We'll just kind of collect your comments and kind of package them and make sure the council is aware of what your thoughts were.
okay. All right,
Thank you.
thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, new business, discussing the CUPs. Is this,
This was just something that staff has been working on. So we've had a couple of situations in the last few months that have required us to dig into the CUPs. And in doing so, they just seem like something that maybe hasn't been revisited in a very long time. And so I don't know if that's something planning and zoning would want to address, look at that and make sure that, things are being followed based on the CUP, if there's anything that's changed. Have we had ordinance changes that affect what we approved before and what we want to move forward with? The ones that I have ran into seem to be properties where there are issues, and so, you want to talk to the property owner, but it feels like we need to have a better finger on the pulse as well. If we're going to hold them accountable, we should be accountable to make sure that we know that those are up to date and that you guys are happy with, the verbiage and what that looks like. So just a thought, and wanted to get your guys' opinion on it.
yeah, I don't think it'd be a bad idea. This subject has come up quite a few times in past years, and then it just kind of fades away before anything happens. But yes, I'd be definitely open to doing reviews, and it'd have to be on a case by case. We can't really do a blanket clause on anything just because each CUP is so much different. But yeah, I like the idea of reviewing in your recommendations, reviewing as many as we need to monthly to verify the usage and see if it's compliant and can continue. Anybody else?
I think
Any
it's
thoughts?
important what you're
Yes.
discussing, very important.
What's the most common ones?
I haven't looked at that list in
What are
years.
the,
What do you mean when you say most common ones?
conditional use permits, like what's the biggest reason people get them? I mean, it's just all kinds of stuff. Yeah.
But no, I'd definitely be up for
Probably
this.
on a case by case, that makes sense to me, yeah.
Yeah. They're checking in, so to speak.
Yeah.
And in reviewing some of them, I mean, some of them actually have like term dates,
Yeah.
and some of them don't. And I don't know, Steve would obviously know a lot better, but I don't know that they necessarily have to have a term date, like they can just continue on. But some of them do have term dates that are
Yeah.
20 years old. So it's like, well,
That was the subject that came up before, is
Okay.
they're so outdated that they need to be looked at again just to make sure compliance, and things have changed since then, and
you sure hope so. 20 years.
Don't.
Technically, under the law,
Old Casey store, that's a sight for sore eyes.
The old one?
you know,
They're idiots in there.
Do they have a conditional use permit?
Oh, I do like the big guy on the top.
They do not.
I'm going to go on record, Catherine, saying kinda, if I could say that. We are trying to dig into that property and assist him with whatever we can do to kind of get that rolling in the right direction. There's a couple of documents in that property that I think need to be addressed probably by the whole commission to get things buttoned up.
yeah, there's a few of them around town that need some attention.
Ours did too, but it's getting cleaned up. Boy, when you can't do anything, it gets pretty bad.
Yeah. But, yeah, I think that'd be a good idea. What do everybody else think? Be something we'd look into?
Yeah. Should keep it current.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah, I don't think we need to vote on it or anything, but no, that's definitely something that needs to be addressed.
I was waiting to get a letter from the city. Are you gonna clean this mess up? I said, be my guest, come and help.
You already got rid of your chickens, so.
Yeah. Hey, they weren't a problem.
Okay, if there's no other discussion, next meeting will be Wednesday, December 10th, 2025, here at the community center at 7 PM. I'd look for a motion for adjournment.
I make a motion to,
Adjourn, you second? I'll second it.
what?
He seconded it. All right.
I second it.
All in favor?
Okay,
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, I'll adjourn the meeting at 7:37.